Hi guys, and welcome to this video. Today I want to do the horoscope of Kanye West, and I looked on astrotheme.com, and surprisingly they had his birth info, his date of birth and his place of birth, but they even have his time of birth listed. So if that's accurate and correct, it means that the ascendant, the rising sign, is going to be correct, and so are the house placements, which is going to add a lot of meaning to this chart. So I hope you're excited about this as much as I am, and I hope you will join me through this journey, through the chart you see next to me here. That's a snapshot of the sky at the moment Kanye West was born, and this is how the planets were placed at the moment of his birth. And the idea behind astrology is as above, so below. So what the planets were doing in the sky is what's going to happen down here on planet Earth, and that's what's going to be a big part of what shapes a person, right? So his rising sign, his ascendant is Cancer. That's at 17 degrees. The way I interpret the rising sign is as your default setting. So if you're in a tough spot, you're naturally going to react the way your rising sign is placed. And Cancer is the fourth sign of the zodiac. It's a water sign that's very much associated with the fourth house, and it's associated with family and the role of the parent and taking care of other people. So that placement means that he's going to take his relationships very seriously, especially the relationship to his children or people who are part of his family unit, people who depend on him. 1 in 7 is 8. 8 in numerology is strength and power. And Cancer being a water sign, it rules a number of things. So water is very good at connecting to the higher realms. So there'll be a strong need for some sort of faith or spirituality in his life. It also governs creativity and the imagination. So a lot of the experiences that he'll have on a spiritual level are then going to be transformed into creativity and creative output. And water specifically rules composing music. So that rising sign is incredibly helpful in seeing that this person is a musician first and foremost, but also that this is a family person who really cares about his closest relationships. The other things associated with water are connection to other people, not just family members, but people in general, and also healing and detox and an ongoing process of letting go of the negative in order to maximize a sense of well-being. So if the rising sign is the default setting, then the sun is what you're striving towards becoming. It's the aspirational kind of self. And the sun is at 17 degrees in Gemini, so we've got another 17. So 1 in 7 is, again, 8, power. And the sun in Gemini is in the sign of the communicator. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the communication planet. And Mercury rules two signs. It rules Virgo and Gemini. So when Mercury is in Virgo, the switch, so to speak, is on the inward position, and it's I listen, I learn, I absorb information, I make sense of it, I create meaning. When Mercury is in Gemini, the switch is on the outward position, and it's I speak, I compose, I talk, I express myself, I problem solve, I find different ways forward. If you look at the glyph of Gemini, it's a Roman numeral 2, so it looks like a doorway, and it's very much about making progress and overcoming obstacles in a way that uses the intellect. But what's interesting as well is when the sun is in a particular house in the chart, there's a tendency to give your power away to that sector of your life. So here we have the sun in the 12th house of spirituality and spiritual strength, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a real positive because it means that there's a longing to have a connection to something bigger, to things that exist in the spiritual realm. And the great thing about that is that if you have a desire to connect spiritually, as far as I'm concerned, the universe is always going to meet you halfway and is going to reach out to you if you're kind of reaching out to it. Let's say the sun was in the 8th house. The 8th house rules authorities and institutions. Then often that's a person who's very willing to give their power away to organizations or the government or the people who make the rules. And they're often people who are very meek and who are very willing to kind of kowtow and to say, these are the rules. Yes, of course, I'll comply. And they're often people who are very unwilling to do anything unconventional or to step outside of the norm. So the fact that he has the sun in his 12th house means that a lot of the information that is going to occur to him creatively stems from the higher realms. And you could even argue that a lot of his work is kind of channeled, and that the source of his creative output comes from some sort of higher plane. So this isn't someone who's going to ever struggle with writer's block or who's ever going to be kind of lost for words. The flow of information is always there. The moon represents your heart, your feelings, your home. And the moon is at 16 degrees in Pisces. So again, 1 and 6 is 7, and 7 is the mind and creativity. So being someone who is creative is going to be second nature to him. But the moon in Pisces, again, it's in a water sign, and it's very, very sensitive. So it's sensitive to spiritual principles. So I would imagine that he has a strong faith, that he has some sort of belief that he adheres to, and that plays a big role in his life, and that influences him. But also the moon in Pisces is again focused on the family, it's focused on creativity, and it's focused on forgiveness. It's focused on seeing the bigger picture and looking at, you know, the entire journey through life and trying to learn something and saying, this isn't just a physical experience that I'm having. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So just via these three placements, I would imagine that he's someone who really thinks along those lines. You know, I'm not just this physical being. My life has value and meaning and purpose, and I think about the big questions, and I ask, what is this all about, and what does it all mean? The midheaven is in Aries at 3 degrees. The midheaven often indicates what you're going to be good at work-wise. It's your vocational aptitudes. And the midheaven in Aries is often associated with roles that are traditionally assigned to men. So it's things like firefighters and the police and soldiers and people who work with firearms, people who work in construction. It's also very much about independence. It's about self-employment, so owning your own business. And the number three in numerology is communication. So for him, the aptitude is going to be to create his own business, to create his own career through what it is he's articulating, what he's communicating, and he certainly accomplished that. But what really strikes me as well is that we have Jupiter, the planet of good luck and good fortune and growth, that is sitting right on top of his sun. So his sun is in the 12th house at 17 degrees. Jupiter is 3 degrees away at 14 degrees in Gemini, but it's in the 11th house of hopes and dreams. And you can see that the sun, the color of it is yellowish gold, and Jupiter is silver. And when I see the sun and Jupiter sitting on top of each other like this in a natal chart, it often means great fame and being someone who's in the public eye and someone who's a public figure and who's very, very well known. So Jupiter at 14 degrees, 1 and 4 is 5, that's freedom, in Gemini, means that the way for him to elevate himself into the public and to become this celebrated person is by not censoring himself and speaking what he thinks is useful and truthful and authentic and what he wants to express. The strongest houses in this chart are the 10th house of work and then the 11th house of dreams. So I've already mentioned Jupiter, so I'll look at the 11th house first. Next to Jupiter, we have Black Moon Lilith, and Black Moon Lilith is at 5 degrees in Gemini. Black Moon Lilith can be the part of the chart where the ego, the shadow self, tries to undermine you and can try to hold you back and keep you small. And in his case, Black Moon Lilith says, hey, Kanye, don't share everything that you think and feel. be very cautious around what you express and do censor yourself. And Black Moon Lilith and Chiron being in the 10th house, those are often the two parts of the chart where the shadow self does show up. And for most of us, it's a journey of overcoming the shadow self and saying, I'm going to do the opposite in order to succeed. So if he is not censoring himself, if he is sharing what he thinks is important and genuine, then that's something that he would have had to work to overcome, particularly in his music. That would have a good effect. If it's communication like what we've seen on Twitter recently, where there's been a lot of controversy, then you could argue that his Black Moon Lilith, it would have helped him in avoiding certain problems by censoring himself about particular things that he's saying. Mercury is the communication planet, the planet that rules Gemini, the sign which his sun is in, so it has added meaning here. And Mercury is at 26 degrees in Taurus. So 2 and 6 is 8, that's strength, power, and Taurus is a fixed earth sign. And Mercury, the communication planet in Taurus, is great because it's ideas and thoughts and communication and perspective on things and decision making. In Taurus, it's I'm able to take my ideas and I'm able to give them physical form and structure. So for instance, to compose the music and to write it and then to put it into a song or an album, or for a designer to take their ideas and to put it into fashion. And if I'm not mistaken, he is a fashion designer as well. So Mercury would help him in that regard. And what I've also not mentioned is that with the rising sign being Cancer, Cancer is ruled by the moon. So this entire chart is ruled by the moon. And I mentioned that his moon is in Pisces at 16 degrees. So it has added significance as the chart ruler. So creativity and spirituality would be everything. They would be the top priorities. You know, for a lot of people in life, we have certain priorities. So for some people, the self is the most important thing. Or for other people, it's the family. Or for others, it's money or social acclaim or power. People have different priorities, right? With his ruler at 16 degrees in Pisces, having a faith is going to be in the top 3 of his priorities, but also being able to express himself creatively is going to be very, very important. And I think that would mitigate the influence of Black Moon Lilith at 5 degrees in Gemini, and that's responsible for him refusing to censor himself. So even if that impulse came up as in, hey, I want to express something, but maybe it would be wiser not to say anything at the moment, I think his chart being ruled by the moon would say, listen, if this is something that occurs to you creatively, if it's something that you feel in your bones, then absolutely don't censor yourself. And if it's, you know, in your mind, then make sure you articulate it. We also have Hades next to Mercury. Hades is the part of the chart that most of us, we really don't want to look at. And that's at 26 degrees in Taurus. And for him then to feel like he hasn't been able to give form and shape and structure to some of his ideas, that would be something that would make him very uncomfortable, and that would make him feel like, wow, I failed in life. I haven't produced anything. My ideas haven't become form in some sort of tangible way. That would be something that he would fight against very strongly. And that's kind of what's responsible for him being so productive, is this sense that I absolutely have to express certain things and give them form and structure. So then looking at the 10th house represents your career, and it makes sense that he has a lot of energy in his 10th house, his career ultimately being what elevated him into the public sphere. He wasn't born a prince, or he wasn't well known because of his heritage. It was because of his work. So we've got Chiron in there. Chiron at 4 degrees in Taurus. Chiron is an asteroid that's known as the Wounded Healer, and it's very similar to his Black Moon Lilith in the sense that if my work doesn't achieve some sort of public recognition, then I'm going to feel like I failed. So both his Chiron and his Black Moon Lilith are going to really push him very hard to produce a lot of work. So in his case then, these two have been very helpful by creating that anxiety that says, if you produce something, then you're okay. For a lot of people, Black Moon Lilith and Chiron, they hold them back in the sense that often they're around codependency in relationships, or encouraging the person to completely censor themselves and to not express anything that they're feeling. And then that outcome is often that they're behind the scenes and often overlooked because they are unwilling to share anything that they think or feel, or certainly wouldn't want to express an opinion. But what's also really interesting about the 10th house is that we have Venus and Mars sitting next to each other. These are two of the personal planets. Venus is the planet of love and beauty and creativity and the female principle. And Mars is the male principle of drive, of masculinity, of ambition, of aggression, of making things happen and not compromising. And when you put the male and the female together, they're 1 degree apart here. Usually something is produced, right? So the fact that he has Venus and Mars sitting on top of each other at 1 degree away from the other, one being the vibration of the pioneer, the person who initiates, both of them in Taurus, really again say that as far as his work is concerned and as far as his creativity is concerned, that's what his career is going to be based around. The fruits of his labor, the creative output. And Venus actually rules Taurus. So Venus is very happy in that placement. And Venus in Taurus is able to create the most beautiful environments. So to create designs that are beautiful and visually beautiful to look at, and to create a wonderful garden, for instance, an environment where people can occupy that environment, or enjoy the space and let the environment influence them. The South Node and the North Node, they show me in a natal chart where the person is coming from and the direction they're moving into. And the South Node is often what's already been accomplished and where there's not a lot of work required. And the North Node is what you're working towards. It's often what's achieved in people's 30s, 40s, 50s, around that time. So his South Node is at 21 degrees in Aries. So the problem of expressing himself is something that he's likely not to have had very much. And like I said before, the moon help mitigate the negatives of Black Moon Lilith and Chiron. This South Node as well says, if I have an idea, if I want to say something, I'm going to say it. And that's the end of it. No discussion. The North Node is at 21 degrees in Libra. And that's much more about fitting into the community and being part of the community, not as the head of the community or as the leader, but as just someone who exists within a group where everyone is equal. So that's something that he's going to be working towards, to create relationships where he's seen as an equal, not as higher or lower or somewhere in the middle, but where he's able to maintain relationships where everyone kind of has the same status. What I mean by that is the ability to maintain relationships and to create a community or a family unit where you're not constantly being admired and you're not constantly being applauded by fans. You're just a normal person and you're just like everybody else. And that's something that for him is going to be something that he needs to work towards. The part of fortune is at 16 degrees in Aries, also in that 10th house of work. So the part of fortune is really the luck factor, where again, you don't have to do very much, and this is the talent that you're kind of born with. 16 is 1 and 6 is 7, mind and creativity. In Aries, expressing my own creative ideas is the luck factor, turning those into work. So I'm not just writing poetry or music for myself, but I'm then taking it to the publishing company, or I'm creating my own record label and I'm producing my own ideas. That's something that the chart supports him in doing. And then we've got some other placements. What's notable is that the moon is all by itself in that 9th house. The 9th house is travel, it's education, and it's the higher realms. And the moon sitting all alone there in that 9th kind of, to me, is the placement of the hermit, or the mystic, the person who really has a very, very strong faith and feels that their spiritual or religious beliefs are so powerful that they're almost more real than the people around in the physical world. So I think he's someone who really exists strongly in the realms of spirit. And then I'll look at the major aspect patterns in a second, once I've looked at all the different actual planets and asteroids and things. But in the middle, we have a grand trine, and that's really significant. I'll come to that in a second. But I want to move down to the 4th house, because I've already talked about the North Node. In the 4th house, we have Pluto at 11 degrees in Libra. Pluto is the planet of transformation and change, life and death. It's highs and lows. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. And that indicates in the 4th house something like a divorce, the breakup of something really important. Or it could indicate a major loss when it comes to the family. And for him, being someone who's so sensitive, any kind of split or loss when it comes to someone he loves is going to be very difficult to come to terms with. And then we also have Uranus at 8 degrees in Scorpio. Uranus is the planet of the miraculous and the chaotic and the unexpected. At 8 degrees in Scorpio, in that 4th house, it means that the way he does relationships, the way he needs to connect to another person is unusually intense. So that he's going to demand a lot more from another person than the average person would, and that for him to feel loved, he really needs to feel loved, and he expresses his love and his affection in a really intense, and you could say in an over-the-top way. It's not just, mild or lukewarm. It's going to be red hot and intense. Then we have the 5th house of what you love to do work-wise, what you love in terms of the people you love. It's what you're passionate about. It's your own children. We've got Juno at 16 degrees in Scorpio. So one thing that he's always going to love is his own creative output. And I think for him, this is going to be an artist who's going to be productive for his entire lifespan. He's never going to stop creating because he's never short of material. He's always going to have something to produce. Then we have Neptune in the 5th, and Neptune is interesting because Neptune is the water planet of dreams and the unconscious and the intuition. It rules Pisces, and it's at 14 degrees in Sagittarius. And in that placement, it's really in the placement of the visionary, the leader, the person who has an idea that no one else has, and he's the one who opens people's eyes to a certain truth that up until then was not known. So he's really not just an influencer, but a visionary, someone who really is able to articulate something that would have never occurred to other people, and that then can be responsible for making him a celebrated figure in society because he's uncovered this truth that then turns out to be universal and turns out to be understood by everyone else. The problem though with Neptune is that when it's in a part of the chart, it often brings the fog and it brings some confusion. And with it being in the fifth house of what he loves, when it comes to his personal relationships, it could create a little bit of confusion and difficulty, as in he could be quite hot and cold at times, or he could be unsure of his love for another person, and he would be unlikely to be consistent and even keeled with it. It could be very, very intense one day and then completely cold and withdrawn another day. And that could cause problems between him and partners, obviously, because another person is going to want to feel some sort of consistency in how their partner feels about them, right? Moving over to the second house, we've got Saturn, the planet of structure and security. That's at 12 degrees in Leo. And 12 is, again, if you add that up, it's 3, communication, new beginnings. Leo is the public, being in the spotlight. And if he finds a way, which he obviously has, if he finds a way to occupy the spotlight and to articulate his particular message, he's never going to want for money ever. So this is a man who has great wealth. This isn't a man who's going to lose all of his wealth. You know, that can happen. Like the example that's coming to mind is the Madoff story. You know, I can't remember his name, but the surname is Madoff, and his wife Ruth Madoff. They had this lavish life. It turned out that he was running a Ponzi scheme. He went to prison, and she then went from a life of having absolutely everything to having limited finances. So that's something that's not going to happen to him, is very unlikely to happen to him. He's also got Pallas at 29 degrees in Leo in his second house of money. So I would imagine that 2 and 9 is 11, that's the master number of service. I would imagine that he's got certain charitable causes that he's been very generous to. Pallas, being wisdom, would say in this chart, hey Kanye, if you do well through your work and you've produced something that has gone down very well, make sure you give back, make sure you give to charities, maybe create your own foundation, give to the poor. And what's really interesting to me is that we have Vesta, which is the hearth and the home. That's at 6 degrees in Leo, and that's in his first house of self. And again, that gives me kind of hermit vibes, as in the only place where he's ever going to feel completely at home is in himself and in his connection to the higher realms and spirituality and faith. Vesta in the first and the moon all alone in the ninth, both of those kind of give me the vibe of the monk, the person who is on his own and who finds the greatest sense of security and belonging when he is deep in prayer or thought or meditation. So there really is a lot of kind of spirituality to this person, which happens to express itself through music, through creativity. We also have some empty houses in this chart, and when we have empty houses, it can manifest in one or two ways. Either the person doesn't care about those areas of life whatsoever, or it's the opposite. It's this huge longing, this desire to fill these areas of life where you feel like you have a hole, where something is missing, right? The third house of communication is empty. The sixth house of work is empty. Seventh house of relationship is empty. And eighth house of institutions and authorities is empty. So in his case, I think it would be the latter. And it would be, I have a huge desire to express myself. And that then would fill the other three houses. That would then become his full-time work. It would influence all of his relationships. And it would establish him as the industry, as the institution. At his level of fame and celebrity and financial success, he is you could say he is a corporation in himself, just through everything he's created. So let's look at the middle of the chart then. This is interesting. So the first thing I alluded to was that grand trine. A grand trine is a big blue triangle, and it indicates an area of major talent. And it connects via his moon in Pisces, which trines over to the rising in Cancer. That trines over to Juno in Scorpio, and it goes back to the moon. So then we have this big blue triangle. And the big talent is his ability to connect spiritually, creatively, but also with his own children. So I would say that he is going to be someone who always considers his own children and their needs and what he can do for them. Then we also have a yod in the middle of the chart. A yod is made up of a sextile and two quincunxes. And if you tilt your head a little bit and look, you have to tilt your head to kind of see it. So it connects with, at the top, with his south node in Aries. That sextiles over to his Sun and Jupiter in Gemini, and they then peak via the two quincunxes to Juno at 16 degrees in Scorpio. So this major aspect pattern is known as a yod. It's also known as the finger of God, and it's a unique quality. And the unique quality is that him expressing his innermost thoughts and feelings through his music and not censoring himself, that's this unique quality that's going to allow him to achieve the levels of success that he has, and that allow him to create generational wealth, where he's not just taking care of his own children, but he's going to be taking care of his children's children, where no one ever has to work because of the amount of financial success that he's created. We also have a mystic rectangle. A mystic rectangle is a big blue rectangle in the chart. It's made up of two sextiles and two trines. The sextiles oppose each other. The two trines are parallel to each other, and I should say the sextiles are parallel to each other as well. That then create this big blue rectangle. And this is really what it says on the tin. It means that there's a mystical connection to the higher realms. So it connects via Neptune in Sagittarius, goes up to the South Node in Aries and Mars in Taurus, sextiles over to the Sun and Jupiter in Gemini. They trine down to Pluto in Libra, and that sextiles back to Neptune in Sagittarius. So the elements we've got are air and fire, and both of those are masculine elements. Air is I talk, I communicate, I produce content, and fire is I take charge of things. I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I have will, and I'm going to implement that will. So this mystic rectangle means that he's both able to receive creative information and insights, but then that he's able to do something with it. You know, a lot of people have great imagination, but they're unable to then capture that on paper by writing it down or painting it. And some people are very good at writing, but have very little imagination or creativity, and then are much more comfortable writing medical textbooks, for instance. So in his case, his mysticism as such is expressed in his music, in his creative output. Let's see if there's anything else. We have a T-square. T-square is an opposition between his Sun and Jupiter and Neptune in Sagittarius, and then they peak via two squares up to the moon in Pisces. And this is an area of unresolved energy that just goes round and round and round. And his constant kind of desire to, or not even desire, his constant he receives a lot of messages via his intuition, via his connection to the higher realms, and that's never going to stop, and that's always going to compel him to work more and to express more and to never stop. So we're going to hear a lot more from Kanye West over the years. He's not someone who's geared up or set up to ever be silenced. And for him to be silenced would be dreadful. That would hurt him terribly. And the things where he's most sensitive is if he is censored or if he's not allowed to express himself. And also if he has a sense of loss via his nearest and dearest, the people he loves the most. Because I think that's something that he would struggle with. And the relationships that would be more common in his life is where he's the star and he's got his fans or his followers or his entourage, the people who are helping the star. Whereas the relationships where he feels like he's an equal with someone, those would be much more rare. And if he then experiences a loss in that area, that would be absolutely devastating. Strongest element by far in this chart is water. So again, this is someone who is a beacon, someone whose antennas have switched on very much and who receives constant messages. And it's great that he has this outlet, but with this chart, don't ever expect Kanye West just to slink away silently, never to be heard from again. That will not happen. So I hope that gives you an idea of his chart. I find this very interesting, and I think it's a fabulous chart, and it's a chart of someone who can do a lot of good, who can create a lot of positive energy in the world, and who can also experience a lot of personal happiness, especially through his role as a father, as a parent. So this isn't someone who is a tragic figure or who's doomed to have this unhappy experience in life. Lots of talent, lots of faith, lots of connection to something bigger, and then also being able to receive a lot of joy and meaning through his closest and most meaningful connections in life. So lucky him. So that's his chart. If you would like me to have a look at your natal chart, then please get in touch via my website. It's gregoryscott.com. To draw up your birth chart, I need your place of birth, date of birth, and time of birth. Again, if I don't have the time of birth, I can use sunrise, but it makes the rising inaccurate and the house placements inaccurate. There's a process called chart rectification, which I can do. You send me 10 or more significant life events, and I can then work out your time of birth. But it can't be, life events like I bought a car in 95 or I visited the Grand Canyon. Well, that could be significant if it totally changed your perspective. They need to be significant, meaningful moments in your life that you feel shaped your existence. And then I'm able to work out your accurate time of birth. Once I have that, then I have your chart in front of me. I can analyze it the way I did this one. See your vocational aptitudes, life purpose, strengths, weaknesses, what's destined in finance, relationships, spiritual development. What I also do then is I look at your progress chart and your transits. I put that on top of your natal chart to see what's coming up in future. So if you're making plans for a move, or if you're looking to invest or buy a house or sell a house or change jobs, and you want to know when the best time for that is, that's where the transits and the progress chart come in and are most useful. If it's around your birthday, I can also draw up a solar return chart, which show me the key themes that are coming up in the next year, from your birthday this year to your birthday next year. And the astrocartography, that's a process that shows me which locations on planet Earth are going to work best for you and which locations aren't going to work for you at all. So if you're considering a move and you're not sure what areas would work for you, then please get in touch with me to have a look at your astrocartography. It's based on your birth charts and it's incredibly helpful. So I hope you've enjoyed this horoscope reading of Kanye West's chart. I certainly have. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, please, so that it shows up in searches. Subscribe for more videos in future. And please share the video with someone you care about, your friends, your family, anyone who you think may be interested in this. That's what helps the channel grow. I also do a daily tarot reading on my channel, so if you'd like to watch that, then please become a member of my channel. Have a fabulous day, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.